Hello, my name is Medhat Elmasry, and today I'll be talking to you about the Recycle and CardViews in Android. We're going to be using Android Studio, so let's get started. I'm going to create a new project, a standard project in Android Studio, and let me call it Foodie, because we're going to be displaying food items. And this is the domain that I'm using, and I'll be saving it in a working directory right here. Click on next. I'll be using API 23 as the minimum API, and the rest I'll just leave it as is. Click on next, and of course I'll use the standard empty activity. Click on next and choose everything as is here, no change, and finish. Before we do anything, let's talk about the RecyclerView. The RecyclerView is a more advanced and flexible version of the list view that implements nesting and scrolling. It takes more setup than list views, but of course it is more sophisticated and it's got more features. RecyclerViews access data using an adapter. You must write your own adapter tailored to your own data. It may sound hard to write your own adapter, but you will see later on that it's not that difficult. It's very easy. And items are positioned in a recycler view using a LayoutManager. For today's demo, we need some dummy data. Since I don't want to get into the complications of creating a connection to a database and all that stuff, so I'm going to create a new class here, and I'm just going to call it food. I'm going to replace the class with my custom code here. You will see that I'm referring to some images. So I need to copy some images into the resource drawable folder. So I'm going to come here and choose Show in Explorer and go into this drawable folder and add some images. I have some images of food items, so I'm just going to copy these and drop them into the drawable folder in my project. So I'm going to go copy and bring them in here and paste them right here, so they become part of my project. Once I do that, you will notice here that all these objects get recognized by my project. Over here I'm using an array list, so let me resolve this. And now everything is resolved. So let's have a look at this class. The name of the class is food. It's got 3 instance variables pertaining to the category of the food, the name of the food, and the image. And here I'm creating an array of food items, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 food items, ranging from seafood to bakery to produce. And in this particular case, in the first case, I'm instantiating salmon, and I'm pointing it to the image of the salmon. I've got a couple of methods here. One is get food by category, and that returns all food items that belong to a particular category. This returns all the food items, and this returns a specific food item by name. So if I say get me salmon, it will just return me the salmon. This is the constructor for my class, and these are like getters. Next, we will use a CardView to define a layout for each food item. A CardView is a type of frame layout that lets you display information on virtual cards. CardViews can have rounded corners and shadows to make them look as though they are positioned above their background. We need to add some packages to our project. So I'm going to go File, Project Structure, and I'll click on the App tab here, and then Dependencies tab there, and I'll click on Add to add a package, and I'll choose Library Dependency.
Now,
the libraries we need. First one is CardView, so I'm going to enter CardView in the filter here and click on search. And the version that I want is the one that's highlighted here. So I can just click on OK. I need another package. So I'm going to click on library dependency again. And the next one I need is the RecyclerView. So I'm going to enter that in the filter here, RecyclerView. Click on search. And the version I want is this one here. So I'm going to highlight this and click on OK. And OK again. I want to create a layout such that I have, for example, an image, and then underneath the image I'm going to write a caption. So it's going to look like this. So this will be my layout. Let me create a layout in Android Studio. So to do that, I'm going to right click on here, new Android resource file, right here. And I'm going to change the resource type to layout. I'll call my layout card captioned image. Click on OK. I will replace the markup in this file with the following. So as you can see here, the containing layout is a card view. I've given it some properties. For example, I have here the card corner radius is 4, so it's rounded, and the card elevation is 2dp, so it seems to be elevated. And it's got a margin, it's got a height, and the width matches the parent. And inside of this card layout, I'm using a linear layout with vertical orientation. And all it's got is an image view and a text view. The image to represent the image and the text view to represent the caption. We're going to use a recycler view. And a recycler view requires a recycler view adapter. The adapter has two jobs. First, it creates each of the views that are visible within the recycler view, and secondly, it binds each view to a piece of data. Here are the steps we're going to go through to create a recycler view. Number one, we're going to specify what data the adapter should work with. Number two, we'll define the views the adapter should populate. And number three, it will have to bind the data to the cards. So let's create a class named captioned image adapter. So I'll call this class captioned image adapter. Click on OK. I'll replace the code for captioned image adapter with my own code and resolve all these dependencies. There are two instance variables, one pertaining to an array of captions and one pertaining to an array of integer representing the image IDs. There's an inner class here called the view holder, and this view holder is responsible for taking care of the view that is embedded inside of the recycler view. And all this does is it has an instance variable for the card view, and the constructor of view holder passes on that card view to the superclass, and it assigns the value of the card view to the instance variable. This is the constructor. The constructor takes an array of captions and an array of image ID. Because this class extends RecyclerView, it also overrides a method called getItemCount, and this just returns the length of the captions array. There are two other methods that are overridden. One of them is the onCreateViewholder, and that instantiates a CardView and it passes it to a new instance of the viewholder and returns that object. The other overridden method is the UnbindViewholder, and this describes how the data is bound to the CardView. You will see here that for each image view, you're going to get the ID of that image view and set it to the image view in the layout. And the same thing with the text view. You get a handle to the text and set that text to the text view in the layout. We need to create the recycler view, which will pass food data to the adapter so that it can populate the images and captions on the card. Let's add a recycler view to our main activity layout. So in activity main.xml, I'm going to replace this text view with a recycler view. Now this recycler view is just a widget, and I'm giving it an ID and width and height and adding to it vertical scroll bars. Next, we need to get the recycler view to use the adapter. These are the steps. Number 1, we need to tell the adapter what data to use, and number 2, attach the adapter to the recycler view. We need to work on the main activity. Let me add some code to the onCreate method of main activity. The first thing I do is get a handle to the recycler view that is in my UI. In my UI, I've given the ID to my recycler view food recycler. Here, I'm getting the data from my food mock class. These two lines represent the two arrays that I need to populate. One for the names, basically the captions, and the other for the food images. So over here, I'm iterating through the array of food items that I got here, and I'm populating the captions and the images. Once I do that, I'm going to instantiate a captioned image adapter and pass it the captions array and the images array. Then I set this adapter as the adapter for the food recycler. We must tell the recycler view which layout manager it should use. We will use a 2-column GridLayoutManager. Add the following code to the bottom of the onCreate method. Here I'm saying that my layout manager is going to be the GridLayoutManager. I'm passing it the current activity, and 2 represents the number of columns that I want. Once I do that, I'm going to set the layout manager for my food recycler to be this layout manager. Let me resolve this class, and I think we're at the stage where we can actually run the application now. Let's have a look. There we go. We have our food items and we can scroll up and down. Let's change this to 3 to see what it's going to do. So run it again, and you will see that there are 3 columns. There we go. We have 3 columns. There are other layout managers that we can play with. There's the LinearLayoutManager if we just want 1 column. So I'm going to comment this out and try out the LinearLayoutManager. So in this LinearLayoutManager, all I do is pass an instance of the current activity. Let me run this and see what happens. So as you can see, we just get 1 column and we can scroll up and down. We can try another variation of this. Let's try, for example, a staggered layout. So I'm going to comment out the linear layout, and let's try the staggered layout. Now the staggered layout is useful if you have images that are not of the same size. It will try to stagger them and adjust them in some manner. So in this case, we're going to use 2 columns and we're going to use the staggered grid layout manager in vertical orientation. This will look very much like the first one we did, but if our images had different sizes, we would have noticed a difference in the way it actually places those items. So here you go. This looks very much like the previous one. That is because all of the images here are pretty much the same size. How about if we want to handle the click event on one of these cards? What do we do? Let's extend this application so that if I click on any one of these, I would get some detailed information. So let me create a new activity and I'll call it the detail activity. So I'll call this detail activity and choose the default values. I'll change the layout for my detail activity with the following markup. So as you can see here, I have a linear layout with vertical orientation, and in here there are essentially 3 widgets. There's a text view for the name of my food item. There's another text view for the category, and this represents seafood, bakery, produce. And then I have an image view that will show me the image of the food item. For this to work, I will need to pass the name of the food item from my main activity into my detail activity. I will make a small change to my Android manifest so that I can set the parent of the detail activity to be the main activity, and this is simply done by entering the parent activity name and setting that to main activity. Now let us update the detail activity.java file. I'm going to add a display food details method to my detail activity, and basically what this method does is it gets the food item that's being passed from the main activity, passes it to a getFoodByName method belonging to the food class that returns the food item. If it's not null, then I'm going to set all these widgets in my details view with the appropriate values. Let me call this method from my onCreate method. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it in here so that it is called whenever the activity starts. We need to get items in the recycler view to respond to clicks so that way we can start detail activity whenever the user clicks on a food item. We will need to attach a listener to the card view that is accessible in the UnbindViewholder method in captioned images adapter.java. Add the following code to the bottom of the UnbindViewholder method in captioned image adapter.java. Here we set the listener to the card view and override the onClick method. The position of that item that's clicked is passed through the UnbindViewholder method. So over here we can determine what has been chosen and pass that to the next activity in the intent. And here we just start the detail activity, and here we just start the detail activity. Let's run the application and see if it does what we want it to do. Click on Run and see if this is going to work. Click on any one of these and sure enough it goes to the details. And if I click on the up arrow, it goes to the parent, and I can scroll up and down, so it works quite well. The only problem is from an architectural point of view, we need to decouple the detail activity class from the captioned images adapter class. This would allow us to link to other activities if necessary. We need to put the code that starts the activity outside of the adapter. We will create a listener interface inside captioned image adapter. Let's add an interface to the captioned image adapter. And this interface is a listener, and it's got only one method called the onClick, and it takes a food item. And we have another method, setListener method, that sets this particular class to listen. Next, we can replace the code inside of this onClick method with this. And this basically says if the listener is not equals to null, then we'll set the onClick method for listener and pass it the food name that the user has clicked on. We next will need to implement the listener in the main activity. So we will append some code into the onCreate method in main activity. Here we're going to set the listener for the adapter to be the captioned image adapter listener. And we'll define the onClick method. It takes a food item, and in this case we are going to pass the name of the food and start the activity. So I'm going to run and see if this works. And now if I click on any one of these, yes, it goes to the detail window and we have a better architected application. Thank you for coming this far in my video, and I hope to see you in future videos in the not too distant future. Thanks and goodbye.